Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. On behalf of the Verizon 5G Labs and the Global Sports Venture Studio, I'm thrilled to welcome you to Beyond the Gridiron, the 5G Gameday experience. I'll be your host and moderator today. I'm Kyle Bunch from the Global Sports Venture Studio at RGA, and I'm thrilled to welcome a great group of panelists with me today for a discussion about the NFL season and what's coming up here as we get ready to kick off tonight. So let's go ahead and welcome our panelists here today. First off, to my right, I'd like to welcome Lexi Vonderly. She's the Vice President of Partnership Marketing at the Los Angeles Rams. Welcome, Lexi. Tell us, as I go around and introduce you, I'd love to hear from each of you a little bit about your role, what you do every day with the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, our team works with our team partners and our stadium partners to really hit their objectives in market, from everything from strategy, bringing the insights of what we know about our fans, what we know about LA, and then obviously just the NFL audience in general, and try to help them, creatively execute what we should do in market together.
At an impossibly exciting time,
yes,
given
yeah.
the new home you'll be opening, or soft opening, but opening shortly. So
definitely a new shiny new toy to play with.
Yes, and we'll talk a lot more about that today. Over on my left, I have Troy Jones, who former college quarterback, and we'll talk more about his story, but here today is the co-founder and CEO of Status Pro. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Status Pro and your journey kind of here?
For sure. So definitely in startup mode, which means every day is different. Everything from, obviously, we just closed an investment round, so raising capital, hiring employees to help us build our products, product development, business development, just overall just sharing with the world what we're building at Status Pro. Status Pro is a sports technology and gaming company, so we use player data with augmented and virtual reality to create authentic simulations that help players and coaches prepare for practice and games, and give fans the ability to engage with their favorite sports in a new way. So we're really excited about the innovative technology we use and excited about what we're about to bring to market.
Yeah, really thrilled to hear more and talk more about both from that sort of player and fan standpoint, the things you're up to. Going down the line here, I've got George Scott from YinzCam, and chances are, if you're not familiar with YinzCam, you've probably used one of their apps if you have any team apps on your phone. George, welcome. You've got a really interesting background to have here today, given your background to NFL and now with YinzCam.
Yeah, sure, Kyle. So I started with the NFL in 2008 on what was primarily a desktop objective, which was to bring 32 club sites onto one platform. And as the world changed, that became desktop, mobile web, mobile app, 7 or 8 different social platforms, connected TV, and my last stint there was probably working on live game distribution and some of the Verizon projects that we were doing in conjunction with the NFL.
Cool.
About a year ago, after working with YinzCam since 2008, I made the switch over to YinzCam. And to your point, if you're not familiar with us, we control about 25 teams in the NFL. We've got most of the NBA teams. Our presence in MLS and NHL is growing, and we also have a very large overseas presence. So overall, we're 200 plus partners across the world.
Well, and as we talk about that experience in stadium, out of stadium, you guys are going to have a really interesting perspective to add to the discussion. And then going around the horn, last but certainly not least, we've got Eric Nagy, who's Director of Sports Partnerships and Innovation at Verizon. Tell us a bit about that, all the things that go with that, all the fun.
Yeah, Kyle, no, it's great to be here. Eric Nagy. So I'm responsible for driving innovation through 5G and Edge in our sports venues, and I work with all the different clubs and leagues throughout the country. As you may know, Verizon is really big on driving 5G into a lot of our sports venues. That's part of our strategy, right? And so my team is there building use cases, right? Seeing what fans like, right? I've worked with partners like George over time when he was at the NFL and now at YinzCam. And so, we're just trying to turn it up a notch and really see what we can come up with.
That's great. And obviously today we're going to spend most of our time talking about football, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't get you to rattle off a couple of the greatest hits from other sports, just to provide some of that perspective of the breadth of work that you guys do.
Yeah, like I said, I work with many leagues and clubs around the country, right? And so we've done some work, previously, even this year, 5G and MEC with the NHL, right? We did a really awesome use case where we took tracking data. We took an application for AR. We're actually able to look at the speed in real time of the players as they were skating around the ice and running that on our mech platform, right? It was real time, real use case. People, it was amazing, right? That's the kind of stuff we test, and then we figure out how do we carry that forward, into the venues and live with fans, right? Even if I had to rewind further back, last year we did Super Stadium, right? We launched that with the NFL. That was actually 7 stadiums, 9 clubs. We allowed that actually out of venue and in venue where permitted. And it was just fantastic, right? It was taking video, giving multiple angles, some AR experience, also, ways to do selfies, throughout the game, sharing those moments. It was pretty powerful stuff, and we're going to look to carry that forward as well.
Yeah, it strikes me as we're talking about this that it's exciting to think about fans coming back into or getting back to full venues, but also just thinking about some of these things that are surprises that are kind of waiting for fans. A lot of things that people have been working on, maybe put out their sneak previews go back to 2019, but it's been a while since you get all those people and a chance to come in and play with all of that. It's going to make for an exciting time. I think it's a really good place to start in terms of, you guys have shared a bit of background on yourselves, but I'd love to look at as the start of the season, maybe just kind of going through in terms of big headlines as you head into the season. You talked about it. You've raised around. What are you guys really focused on? What's driving you this year?
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, it starts on the training side with our training products, right? Obviously, we all know the big challenge this season is still navigating COVID. Teams trying to make sure that they're efficient in the process so no one loses time on the field. But I do believe our technology is positioned nicely to help mitigate the effects if that does happen, so teams are prepared. So being able to use the products to get reps back that you might lose due to any result of a positive test and a player being removed from practicing with his teams. Then outside of that, on the fan engagement side, I think clubs are focused on and everyone's focused on how do you engage the fan from home? How can you innovate the experience, make them feel like they're still a part of that game day experience that you get at the stadium? And we feel our technology is positioned nicely to not only offer that during COVID, but even after COVID, because obviously clubs are going to want it to continue to engage fans who don't make it out to the stadium. And those are going to be some of the main things that we focused on in 2021.
Yeah, and I imagine that that's sort of working potentially with how Verizon, how you start to get into that much more of real-time shared experiences is a big part of that roadmap.
For sure, yeah. 5G technology is going to really allow us to maximize our reach and connectivity amongst fans and even on the training side as well. So really excited about that partnership and how we're positioned there.
So George, looking at, just kind of going around the horn here, big things that you guys are working on. Obviously, you're always staying busy, but what would be some of the things to look for this year from you in football?
Yeah, and just how busy we are is, remember, there was no preseason last year, right? And so this is like you're catching us at the tail end of a very intense preseason. But I think similar to Troy, last year was really interesting for us because you just had a number of stadiums where you had no fans. And then when you had fandom, it was limited. So I think what we were trying to work through for a lot of clubs is how do you continue to engage your avid fans? Those are the fans in the app, right? When they can't attend the games on Sunday and they still want to feel connected. And then on the flip side, what we saw was a lot more clubs investing in stadium infrastructure for the app, cashless, touchless. No one wants to touch anything anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So we saw a real influx of contactless payment, mobile ordering. And I think one of the things as fans come back that we're really excited about being able to do for our clubs is segment their users and understand user behavior. That's going to be more important than ever because you may not get the same set of fans back that you had before, right? Make it a younger file. And so how do we understand their behavior and deliver an experience that is tailored to them?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I hadn't necessarily thought of the changing landscape in terms of who is going to, especially in those early days, who is going to be the first ones back into a stadium, into a venue.
Yeah, I just think the question for me is, the guy who's 55, 60 years old, and been going for 20 years says, gee, it's kind of nice sitting on the couch with my grandchildren and I don't have to drive. So does he come back or not? And does someone replace him? And if so, how do we sort of change our behavior to meet the needs of that fan?
Yeah, no, that often more demanding fan, different set of expectations. Yeah. So Lexi, you finally get to actually market to fans in person, but you had to do a lot last year to keep those fans engaged. And I'd love to just have you share with everybody some of the things that you were doing, because I feel like you guys were really out in front of the curve in terms of engaging fans in a market that they have a lot of other options. Let's just say that here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love a challenge. So I think last year was, and with our partners, trying to figure out how do we actually engage with our fans that we now can't have at games. We do have a 360 calendar with the NFL. So really looked at ways when we launched our uniform. We were the first team to do that through Snapchat. To that earlier point, different audience. Like that is not your STM. That is not the fan that we normally speak with. So being able to take the challenge and open up an opportunity for us that helps grow us within LA. Same with another partner with Postmates, same thing. It's being able to be the first team that delivers apparel in LA, because we just can't have people in stores. We're trying to find like all those avenues. Obviously with Verizon last year, being able to take that experience home. The fun part of that one too was we actually got to like market it, which was really fun, because we hadn't been able to look at the learnings we had last year with that and take that into this next year. And I think learnings across the board. Last year, open up a stadium, no one's in it, a lot of testing, a lot of optimizing, and then how do we actually bring that experience to the people who are returning this year. And even the 2 preseason games we've had, like at home, a lot of learnings. Trying to see behaviors have all changed and trying to see how you see where those behaviors are coming, all mobile tickets, all those things. So it's exciting to figure out how to evolve with them. So.
Yeah, thinking about it from a stadium standpoint, and I went to USC, so I won't bash the Coliseum, especially now that it's been redone. But some of those early games to now, that's a significant home upgrade. That'll definitely be a shift. And we'll talk more about SoFi because everybody's really excited. Eric, for you, building on last year, what are the big things?
Yeah, Lexi mentioned something. So testing and optimizing. Look, we've got the best engineers on the planet when it comes to wireless communication, right? That's a never-ending job. So that'll continue. They're actually doing that right now as we speak with SoFi. We're always improving, right? This year, you'll just see us continue to drive 5G and edge, throughout the country, right? We will continue to densify in our stadiums. We'll continue to build out. You'll see more and more, continue. And on top of that, then that's where it comes the experiences, right? You'll see multi-view carry forward, definitely here in the NFL. And we'll definitely be looking to solicit feedback from fans to see, what do you think, right? Is this something that, as George mentions, does this get you off the couch, right? That's what we want to do, is build experiences that get you off the couch and want you in that venue. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I alluded to it. I want to get right into when we were talking and prepping, we were, I think the North Star for you guys in setting out to build SoFi was to create the most innovative stadium in the world. So, as we talk a little bit about Gameday and that as a pinnacle experience, how do you guys define that vision and kind of what guides you in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, obviously, the developers of the stadium really set out for that, and I think 5G and everything we've done with Verizon has been a big part. It's for us as the team, who is one of many things that are in that stadium. We're looking at what are all the capabilities that we actually have with the technology, and then how do we activate it and execute it a little differently so that the experience with the Rams is very different than the other partner that they work with, but with concerts and things like that. So I think our team is very, very committed to figuring out how to communicate and get the awareness out for all those touch points with our app and with that experience. And I think that's what we get excited about. Obviously, the infinity screen we have in there allows a ton of real estate to engage with people in the stadium. And I think you just hit on it, but it's how do you actually get people to go there and realize that's a different experience than any other stadium. Mm-hmm. The amount of real estate allows so much data and so much information on there that it's not like waiting, like at most stadiums where there's only so much real estate. So you're kind of just waiting, do you want to see the live, the live stats that are going through versus being able to see it all at once and have it work together. So the engagement with fans in stadium is what I hope separates us as well. Yeah,
it's interesting too, thinking about that shared home, right? And so on the one hand, I mean, you have this incredible stadium, but really, technology is your main, how you deploy and create experiences with technology are the main differentiator. You go to the other team's home games, and there'll be a board and there'll be those things, but it really is that becomes that much more important, I imagine.
And we're competitive, so of course, even identifying some of the issues we have with the human behaviors changing, coming in and out of the stadium for the first two games we've had at home, it helps us set up briefs of how can our partners, work with partners to answer solving that problem, which I get excited about because then, it really helps bring the effectiveness to the problem.
Yeah, thinking about some of those shifting behaviors and thinking about mobile adoption, mobile payments. I was actually out at the MLS All-Star out at Bank of California Stadium, and striking me how many people were paying with mobile. I mean, and it feels like, if I look at mobile ticketing, that was sort of a gradual process, right? Trying to kind of change behaviors, all the people that wanted their ticket stub, all of those different frictions. But it feels now like mobile payments really might, in those shifting behaviors, take off a lot faster. I mean, how are you guys, obviously you're a core component of that. What are you guys seeing in terms of trend lines and where that's going?
Yeah, I think that the NFL and Ticketmaster really changed that behavior starting about 3 years ago by, I don't want to say forcing, but recommending that teams adapt a mobile ticket only strategy. And of course you have the people who want their card stock. I remember getting some Rams card stock, but I didn't really need it, right? I think what we see happening there is that now that you have to have the mobile app to enter the stadium, what will you use it for once you're in there? Because before you had a ticket, and so maybe you get in there, you never open the app. But now you open the app, you walk in, we have what's called dual mode with a lot of our clubs. So the person sitting on the couch is going to get one experience. The person who enters the stadium may get a push notification that's geofenced saying, hey, we have a new food and beverage provider, or check out the Verizon multi-view, here's how to access it. So I think those are some of the things that we're looking at as morphing to. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we saw a large group of clubs migrate to mobile food and beverage. And that doesn't mean that they're 100% cashless, but at some level, they're doing what you described at LAFC. They have some form of mobile food and beverage. And so we're trying to help our clubs capitalize on that.
Now, another big part of your sort of mobile app, you've got very functional tickets, payments, and then there's this kind of major, how do I keep the fan engaged? And this is something I'm interested to talk about and get different perspectives on. What is that right mix? We don't want everyone on their phone the whole time, but then there's different studies that'll tell you that either way, they're probably gonna be on their phone 60, 70%. How do you guys, and maybe I'll start with you, Lexi, but how do you think about that balance? And for all of us, we want them cheering, but how do you try to find that mix?
Yeah, I think it starts too with the data. We know that people are dueling it. We know what they're watching. If they're at home, they're watching it, and they're also second screening. And whether or not they're looking at different football, or just on Instagram. We know that they're doing that. So how do you ensure that you're communicating to them through those different experiences, and they become different. And I think even within game, right? During our game days, it's one thing, but even when we launch things like we did Draft House that way, we took draft out of the normal, what people normally do, and we created this whole experience and this whole world that we wanted to make sure that our fans could feel a part of with this Rams house and with our Draft House. But then also welcomed STMs there. We tried to make sure we were touching both points at a time that there's no game, so obviously at a different point. So I think we now look at it trying to make sure we got the 72,000 in stadium, and we've got, hopefully not just LA. We're looking at it nationally. How do you actually push your brand into that? So I think we try to look at it definitely on both ways.
And just thinking about it from a fan perspective, as somebody who a lot of those experiences for once upon a time were maybe a little bit more frivolous, a little bit more just old school advertising, right? They were just there to distract you. I imagine that as we're getting more and more of that 5G mobile edge compute out there, that additive component you talked about, even with the NHL, suddenly they're not distracted, they're really getting the game enhanced.
Yeah, no, and what's funny is I think it all depends when it comes to the fans that are coming into the stadium, right? What's too much, what's too little. I remember as a kid when fantasy football was starting, I'd go to a Steelers game and I'm like, I don't know what's going on with my team here other than the score of the game here, and I'd see some pop-ups, on the scoreboard there. And so that's all, changing, right? I have a family of 5, by the way. So if I'm going to go to a game, I'm going to keep my kids entertained. I'm going to obviously, I'm watching the game. My wife most likely likes the sport too that we're watching. So I think there's a balance of, you have to have choices, right? People like to have customized choices for their experience, and so I think that's super important if you're going to capture the whole swath of the crowd, right? And so I think if we, continue to lean on that, obviously, 5G and especially Edge, but 5G for sure really gives that platform to build on top of, right? And you can give all that data that everybody wants, right? And I think that's really important.
You hit on something, that personalization component or the have it your way. And I was kind of looking at some of the examples, be it things you guys did with multi-view that are, hey, very much or something like the Nickelodeon partnership would be one that I would point to from the NFL that was obviously just hey, there's a subset of audience that wants that. How do we see that kind of continuing? Maybe it's a good place to start with you in terms of other areas where this sort of put the control in the hands of the fan. There's what they see, there's betting coming along. Are we leading to a place where everybody's watching their own version of the game almost in a certain sense, or,
Yeah, I think back to your question to Lexi is, we all know people are on their phones, right? But what Lexi wants is they're engaging with the Rams brand as opposed to being on social media and all these other places. Like if you can sort of keep them in there, then it's great. And so I think to your point, with all the utility stuff that we do, that's to make your game experience easier. If you're mobile ordering, you're not having to go stand in line, right? All of those things are designed just to make the game day experience a little more, a little less congested with all the noise that goes on around the stadium. And then I think about those tailored experiences, yeah, that's some of the work we're doing with Verizon, which is you're not going to watch multi-view for the whole game, but there may be periods of time where it's really compelling to you. Like let's say your team is, you're sitting at one end of the field and your team is about to score at the other end. That's a great time to be fast switching between those camera angles. And so I think experiences like that are indigenous to the game, I don't really care if someone's looking at their phone as long as it's about the game on the field.
Yeah, it's like one of those stats or one of the research study that said, actually, if you're taking pictures at a concert, you're more likely to remember it than if you're just super plugged in, because it's that kind of like seeing it through. We've talked a lot about this, what I think is kind of convergence of what technology can do, but there needs to be a human behavioral component that kind of pulls. So shifting gears, Troy, I want to get your perspective, because you started in a place of working with athletes. You came from a background as an athlete yourself. And it seems as though what we've seen is a generational shift. There was that stretch of a lot of athletes skeptical of technology. It wasn't how they came up. Maybe you're tracking me so that you can negotiate my next contract down, whatever that looks like. Now you've got, I think you talk about it, I think we can talk about at least Lamar and the Ravens and some of the teams that you're working with. But how are you seeing that evolution, or just kind of the different perspective mindset from a younger athlete today?
Yeah, for sure. I think the younger generation are always on their phones. They're all gamers, so the idea of using technology, especially gamified technology, is something that they're open to. When you look at the effects of COVID, again, teams are now open to turning to technology to help them. How can we help this player get better? We can't have them in meetings for 3 hours, 4 hours like we could 20 years ago, so we got to figure out a different way to engage them. And one thing an athlete is always told is visualize yourself making that play, doing that assignment, making that catch, making that throw. So the feedback we've gotten from people like the Ravens has really just been around, our technology providing them the ability to visualize themselves doing that, but against any scenario that they want, right? So imagine yourself literally being in a one-to-one experience of what you're going to see on a Sunday, what you're going to see at practice later that day, and allowing a player to just get that rep over and over again. I think the most valuable asset to a team and a player is time. So being able to allow them to essentially take that field with them home or in the meeting room has been extremely valuable, and something that I think is going to be here to stay as you just look at the changes in all the rules between the NFL and NFLPA and the CBA, as well as just technology starting to take over the sports industry.
Yeah, I mean, and thinking about certainly at the pro level and some of the things we're talking about, and avoiding injuries, extending careers, but even thinking down, obviously over time as technology always kind of scales, becomes more cost effective. I mean, if you had been a young athlete coming up with this kind of like, how much would have just being able to get those added reps or get that added benefit?
Yeah. So when I think about myself and my co-founder Andrew Hawkins, obviously like we came up with the idea because we were athletes, right? The thought was, hey, we were two guys that worked hard to get where we ended up in terms of our playing careers, and how can we help athletes like us who want to put in the work, who want to put the effort towards being the best athlete they can be. So for me, if I had the technology, especially being a quarterback and being someone where you got to know everything that's going on in the field at all times, I would have used the product that we built every day, right? Because it was just the idea of, okay, I have this play against this situation, I need to know it like the back of my hand, then I need to know that same play against a different situation, right? There's only but so much reps that you can get, and that goes back to the time analogy, like you're very limited in the time that you have. So again, constantly being able to go over it would have been extremely valuable, and that's really the thesis of our company and how we built the product we have.
So I'm curious, this is, you talk a lot about the 5G use cases, and this feels like the perfect one.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday about, well, one, feedback is important. So even as a kid when I was in sports, I mean, just being able to know if you're on the right track and such. But then also the prep that goes into, so we were talking about playing video games and golf. And so somebody was going to play Pebble Beach. And so what they did is they went and played the video game to learn the course, right? Mm-hmm. And then they understood where all the traps were and the grade of the green and stuff. And then they go out and play Pebble Beach and they're much more prepared, right? So that's why I look at things like that. It's how do you prepare? It's like you can use visuals and you can see defenses. You can make those reads based off of matchups and such. And even some of the work that we're doing, with the Suns is a good example of the player health and performance, where it's, we're taking some of that biomechanical analysis and such, and just analyzing pose detections, trying to see matchups and things like that. There's a lot of really good work there that great use case for 5G, because you want it real time, right? And you want to be able to take some of the best KPIs, mix them together, right, and create something that's usable and on near real time, right? So I think it's really, really important.
And to that point, just about the collaboration with Verizon, one of the main reasons why we were so excited that they were part of our seed round was exactly that. They're using 5G to help connect teammates, right? So just imagine being able to go, if you're a quarterback, be with your offensive line in a virtual environment, connected, seeing the same thing, prepping the way that you said. It just really just takes it to the next level. Like I said, you get that constant repetition that is needed to become an expert and a pro at something. And again, I think it sets our company apart, and it really is going to put us in a position to really help the athletes continue to just get better and improve.
No, that's I think the potential of it. What's interesting to me is just thinking about how the competition gets that much better. I mean, we already feel like you're playing at this time where you see defensive linemen, defensive ends running 40 times. That used to be like you'd be the fastest receiver in the league. Where's the capacity? Like, where's the limits of what's possible for a lot of these guys as these technologies progress and potentially even find their way that much more into during games, right? Like, I think that's where we eventually go, is some of these augmentative elements right there in real time for the players.
Yeah.
And then thinking similarly, I guess, about the home experience a little bit. We talked about it before and how we're engaging fans, but I see that as something, again, that's changing really quickly, and thinking about, again, that sort of role of the media companion kind of piece. And so I guess curious about how you guys are, working with, it's complex, especially with the NFL as far as media partners, as far as kind of navigating that whole landscape, but the way you're approaching that in terms of how you build complementary experiences for the viewer at home. Whoever maybe wants to.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a balance, right? I mean, my mission is to capture the value of the investments that we make in the stadiums and drive, the reason of why you come to the stadium, right? Doesn't mean that you forget about at home, right? There's a balance of, it's like, hey, if we have certain data from the games and such that, is a good complement to at home, because let's be realistic, not everybody can go to a game for many reasons, right? So you want them to be able to feel like they're part of it still, because they're still a fan, right? They still cheer for that team, right? But it's a choice, right? I mean, so there's that fine balance, but what I build for the stadium or the team builds for the stadium, it's not necessarily something we can do at home because we don't have the network at home to support something like that, right? And so, it comes with a trade-off,
And that was something I was going to ask you about as far as that rollout. Obviously, 5G is a big vision over a long period of time. Where would you say we're at in terms of, if we look at stadiums and then we look at that sort of consumer at home watching?
We're at 60 plus venues as we speak, right? And that number continues to grow, and it will continue to grow, for a very long time, right? And because venues thirst for throughput. I mean, when you pack 65,000, 70,000 in college football, 100,000 people into a stadium, they need connectivity, right? Everybody wants to brag about what they're doing there, right? I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Hey, I'm at the game. You want to tell everybody. You want to share it. You want to, it's memorable, right? I mean, that's what it's all about, and we want to power that, right? It's so important.
Yeah, no, definitely. And George, for you, I know, we talked a little bit about the kind of creating those integrated experiences. Are you working a lot with teams from a media standpoint in terms of how you create more viewing experiences for them with their media partners and with their kind of sponsor partners? Is that part of the...
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's an important aspect of mobile apps that I think used to just exist on social and the web, and the app is a very valuable property because those are where your season ticket holders are, your season ticket holder wait list, your displaced avid fans, and so you've got a very qualified group of people that are on the app. And the other thing about app users is we know they consume a lot more content than somebody on the web. And so for us, I think a lot of our focus, while it's on the stadium piece, there's of course the content side, right? Because the content you want to deliver in an app is different than what you want to deliver on Snapchat and TikTok and even mobile web. And so that's where we work with a lot of our partners on doing that. I think when we think about the at-home experience and personalization there, what do you want to be doing? Do you want to predict the pick? Do you want to do free to play? Like, what is your experience that connects you to the team during the game? And I think what we want to do is give fans a lot of different options there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know as membership is becoming more and more a part of that component as well. So there is this sort of, how do I deliver different experiences to different people? I know that'll become increasingly big too.
Yeah, and I think registration has become much more prevalent among, like single sign-on in our apps has become much more prevalent, and that just gives you more insight into what your users are doing, and you can start to tailor that experience to them specifically.
Thanks for that. No, so Lexi, as you guys go into this year and kind of building out that digital ecosystem, you said something interesting on the call, this sort of the push and pull of the social platforms can be your best friend, but it's also, you're competing with a lot of different things. How are you finding that balance of engaging out there in the wild and then trying to kind of get them engaged on your touch points, your channels?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're hitting on our 6th year here in LA. We're still building our brand, right? And it is crowded with sports teams as well, and then just LA's crowded. So I think we are trying to just to make sure we're differentiating ourselves in market with whatever we're doing, and then think of all our campaigns and pushes as sort of 360 and integrated. Like, what are we doing in stadium, and then how does that actually go out socially and digitally and to different audiences based on platform and target? And I mean, even some of the stuff that we're working with Verizon on right now, it's like the perspective piece that you guys are working on is so interesting for the fan at home. To be able to see when a big play happens, our coaches, the players and the play, and then the reaction of fans, to be able to show that maybe later, but not as a live experience, but to be able to show that's what fans get excited about, and that they feel like they're still a part of it. So trying to bring that after, the fact to get them to come, to bring them into the stadium. But yeah, I mean, I think too, continuing to push on technology and the innovation. I love our partners who want to sort of try things, and if it doesn't quite work as much as successful, we'll take those learnings and push it on to the next as we sort of touch different cities in LA. And I think that's where we look at it, is a full 7-day lead up to each game. It's not just the game day piece. As we build our brand here in LA.
As you, and this is kind of a question across the board, as you're trying new things for and a lot of sports organizations are still getting there, how do you define success? When you're experimenting, sometimes things are going to fail. What do you look at in terms of that?
Well, I'm lucky. I mean, I will say with the Rams, I have a great boss and they believe in testing things. So they give me the ability to test things with their partners where I'm not asking for investment. I'm not asking, so I'm like, hey, we need to test it as a brand. And we've had great success and we're doing it with a few league partners right now. We're in the middle of it. And a lot of it's developing content, storytelling, but not just the traditional assets that come with sponsorships. And I think I'm lucky, and I know that, just talking to obviously other teams, but that allows us to be different too. So I think testing things is so important. And then the next year, which we had great, Draft House was a great example. Rocket Mortgage, that was a test to be like, could we take draft outside what everyone knows a draft being at a facility and take that off site with a partner that it makes sense with and have it be successful. And obviously this next year we're doing it again for the next few years. And Rocket Mortgage was at first I don't know if this is gonna work. And then the success of it is okay, great, let's do this again. So I think we're lucky to be able to do that with partners, And
Eric, same question. You get a lot of people to try a lot of things.
Yeah.
How do you talk about that?
Look, it's all about feedback, right? I mean, we always we operate in this motto of feedback is a gift, which truly believe that because look, when you do something, you need to know, do fans care? I'm lucky enough that I love sports. I'm also in technology, so I feel like I'm just lucky to be able to do this. I think a lot of us are kind of in the same boat here. But so the stuff that we're working on, I'm like, oh yeah, would I use that? Yeah, or when I was a kid, would I have used that? Or hey, if I was an athlete, would I use that? And it's same for you, right? I mean, gosh, you're building something that it's like, this could help me be better. And I wish I had this when, I was in college or in high school, because I'd probably be even much better, now. And so that's so important because then if you're on the right track, right? And if you're not, you shelf it and you move on to the next one, right? And I think that's the key. And we just have to make sure that you solicit that feedback, and that comes in many ways, whether it's user groups or surveys or friends sometimes give you the
give it to me straight.
The straight, frank feedback, right? And so that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and same for you guys. How?
Yeah, I think we sit in a little bit of different space than maybe Eric and Verizon because we're B2B2C, right? And so one of the great things about having not just the NFL but all these other clubs is that they are creators of ideas, and what our team is very good at is taking an idea and turning it into a product. And so we see innovation all the time that starts with a club saying, what if I wanted to do this for my fans? And then we create that. If it's successful, there's no reason why it doesn't work in other leagues per se. So we can take that product, whether it's developed in the NBA or the NFL, and once we produce it, it's available to anybody.
Yeah, no, that I'm sure the learnings and the data that you guys are able to look at across that set really gives you guys an advantage.
Yeah, and I think for the teams too is they're very good about it, looking at it the same way. Like we had an experiment during draft with your neighbors, the Chargers, who said we want to gate our not around draft, but around their coach's first press conference. They said the only place it's available live is in the app, which is a big departure from saying it's on YouTube, it's on the mobile website, it's on Facebook. Said the only way you're going to see that is you're either registered or you're going to sign up for the app. And they were prepared to have 5 people and say we failed. The reality was they had thousands of people. And so it was a huge success. They got a lot of names to file, and they're in the same boat as the Rams. They're trying to build an audience. And so getting, a few thousand names to file is really critical.
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to, again, shift gears a little bit. Troy, I want to go to you. You talked about it a little bit before. You've raised a round. This is the exciting time. We've got this runway to go do some new things. And I know I know part of that extends on the athlete side, part of that extends to some things on the fan side, some of which you may or may not be able to talk about, but give us a picture of kind of where you're going.
Yeah, it's interesting because Eric talked about feedback, and I think speaking to the athlete side first, Hawk and I were really big on listening to the feedback that the coaches and players provided about the training product, right? So we were strategic in keeping the number of teams we worked with low, just so that we could hear that feedback and make sure that our product fit organically into their workflow before we focused on scaling. So now that we raised the capital, I think we are in a position to scale and offer our technology to more teams. So really excited about that. And on the fan side, the same thing. I mean, I think COVID, obviously you've seen a change in just the way leagues want to engage fans. So we're listening to say, hey, how can we bring value to a club, whether that be in the form of an at-home experience, whether that be in the form of an in-stadium experience, and really just kept our ears close to the ground, spoke to different people and said, okay, how can we truly encompass what it's like, a one-on-one experience of what it's like to be an elite athlete, an NFL athlete, and put that into our consumer-facing products. So now that we have the capital, we're gonna develop those products, and we'll be excited to share the specifics of that soon. But all in all, it's really just gonna be around creating a community, creating a new form of engagement between the athlete and fan that I think is gonna bring a lot of value to clubs, to fans and athletes. So we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm curious, obviously you're close to it as you're developing it. You've got a unique perspective as somebody who has been inside the helmet now, do you find it changes from now as the fan side changes kind of the way you're watching the game and your connection to it?
Yeah, I think that, when you're an athlete, you always look at things out of kind of an athlete's first perspective, but you do identify that you still have the same passion that you did from when you played. And I think for us, that's one of our theses of creating these authentic products, these authentic experiences that allow fans to now see it from that player's perspective. And my experience as a former player, but then now obviously now on the fan side, really, because I love football and I watch it as if, like a fan, is to make sure that our products really show a fan what it's like to be in that person's shoes and just create engagement from it, right? What does that look like? To say, hey, I got a chance to just experience it from a different perspective. There's so much emotion that comes with playing sports, and if you can try to capture all of that and put that into an immersive experience, I think it can be really powerful and bring a lot of value just to the space as a whole, and that's what we're looking to do.
I know, thinking about it from a Verizon perspective, I know we've even worked with you guys on some things that are more performance-oriented and kind of looking at that. How much are the clubs and teams that you're working with starting to really now, hey, we've got all this infrastructure in place, how can it really start to change the way we manage the game, the players, all of that?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of discussion in that space, right? And I think they're looking at it in a different lens of, I've got this data that's real time, or the potential for real time. Yeah, can I use it in game? Now, granted, every league is different, right? And there's a lot of different rules and regulations and whatnot. But you could be heading down a path of at some point that real-time data is there for making decisions, in games and things like that, right? The practice facilities, that's where they're heading and using this data so you can automate your charting, right? Instead of using a clipboard and charting movements and things like that, just give me the report, right? Tell me how they performed out there, right? So I can go make decisions and focus on other things, right? Focus on different areas, because every league, you have large teams, small teams, and you just want to focus where your challenges are, right? And so I think that's key. So it'll continue to evolve. It's exciting stuff, though. And you hit on one thing. It's like you build for a certain use case, but then there's like a secondary effect of, oh wow, it can actually be used for fans, or right, or hey, you know what? We can operate. The team can use this just for day-to-day operations or and such. So it's a lot of exploration, and it's the feedback still. Oh, I could use this for different things, and even with the multi-view is a good one where it's like, oh, I can use this to study game film, if we wanted to, right? So there's a lot of different applications.
We were talking before. I think you and I were talking before about some of this is also just a whole new sets of skills and people, like talent, that need to come into sports, right? There's sort of and I'm sure you're probably dealing with it, and we used to work together. You came from more of an agency background, and I'm sure you're seeing that within an organization like the Rams, of bringing people in that aren't necessarily from the sports world to try to have some of that expertise.
Yeah, no, I always like it, they took a risk on hiring someone like me just to come in and do partnerships, because obviously I come from a agency background that's been working on brands like Beats and Apple and Gatorade. So I think it's to be able though to come from that, right? It's taking a risk because I don't know that whole partnership world and I had to learn it. But I think at the same time, I'm able to work with our partners and be able to think like, how do we actually get this to market? How do we get the awareness and conversion piece together? And it may not fit within the contract, but how do we actually make it effective? And I think that we're really seeing that. And the cool thing is when hearing about some of the stuff is just with the youth. Like I've got 2 kids who are into sports, and it's just what that'll do for kids. Like if you imagine what elite athletes, like if they had that kind of data, that kind of information, it's going to be pretty cool. And like, how do they, start to match up? I think that's what I get all, like, again, just something you're not actually seeking out for, but then comes, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. These sort of projecting it out. I don't know what the impact is. We've talked about it before of some of these, YouTube had there was a wave of stars who suddenly had game film and just hours and hours of whoever it was to study, and now what comes next on that front? Yeah. So speaking of what comes next, as we're kind of coming into the home stretch here, and we're taping a little early, but if you're watching this, you're watching it probably as the season's about to kick off in just a few hours, and the way the NFL season works, it's fast. So 157 days later, everybody will be coming over to your house for a giant game, for a Super Bowl. So I wanted to go ahead and go around the horn, predictions for the year. Look, it could be who's going to win the Super Bowl. It could be things that we're going to see from a fan standpoint in that return to crowds, in a lot of the exciting things that are rolling out. So we'll go down here. We'll start with you. Troy, what are your predictions for the year?
Well, the big question, obviously, my Super Bowl pick. I'm biased, but I got to go with the home team, the Ravens. Obviously, there's a lot of noise around if Lamar will get figured out. I know that he takes that, he hears that, and I think they're going to have a big year. So, as far as Super Bowl picks, I'm going to go with the Ravens. And just the general with the season, I think it's going to be exciting. I think everybody's excited to get back in stadium. I know last year was the first year ever, I think, in my life that I didn't go to a football game in person, So being able to get fans back in the stadium, obviously it'll be not the same as it was pre-COVID, but just the energy that you feel, the excitement, that matters to players. I think being able to go out of the tunnel and see people excited and passionate about it will make a big difference, and I just think it's going to be an exciting season.
Yeah, absolutely. George, NFL veteran now in here, what do you think we're going to see?
Yeah, if I was sitting here a year ago, my thought was people are going to be very hesitant to come back. And you've now seen with travel that that's not the case. Look what's happening in Hawaii, right? And so I think that people are going to come back in droves, and I think that some of the behavior patterns established in COVID actually, help kickstart the next set of technology. So even older people, like if you want to order a sandwich, I've got 7 food apps on my phone, right, from COVID. And so everybody has become accustomed to using their phones. QR codes were nearly dead.
Yeah.
And now they're very prevalent. And so for me, I think what's exciting is that, a lot of people haven't been in a stadium since 2 years ago, and they're coming back, and they've got mobile food and beverage. They've got new experiences that we've built. They've got all sorts of other use cases for the app that they didn't have before. And then the flip side of that is being able to, to Eric's point, we have data. So are those things working or not, right?
Yeah.
Like we have mobile food and beverage. Are people using it or not? And if not, why not? And how do we solve those problems?
I hadn't thought about the DoorDash part of this. That sort of like that everybody has been conditioned to mobile order a lot more than they would have previously.
Yeah, you'd have teams that maybe were apprehensive, like you're in a Midwestern town where behaviors are different, and they've come around. And I think the second thing is safety concerns, health and safety for the fan has been the driver of a lot of this, and that's a great reason. But the better reason is, once you have all of this in place, you really know who your fans are, what they like to do, and then how to super serve them when they're in stadium.
Yeah, which is big for the fan experience. It's big from a sponsor partner standpoint in terms of that much more that you can go bring to the Rams partners. So I'll give it to you. I imagine I know your Super Bowl pick, so we'll just go ahead and set that aside.
You said home team earlier, and I was like, yeah, the Rams.
So we'll set that one.
Yeah.
But predictions for this year. What can what do we have? Both predictions and what to expect from.
I agree. Like a lot of what you said is like I think the actual last year helped us. I think we were really nervous about the adoption of mobile tickets 100% and just seeing some of the behaviors of preseason. We haven't had the issues I think we were all thinking we were going to have. And so we have other issues, but we're like, but I think that it did actually really help set up like people coming in and being able to adopt those behaviors. I think I'm excited to see what brands and partners are going to do for Super Bowl, like around LA and bringing that energy and what people are going to do with this stadium that I haven't even thought of. And I think that's what I get excited about because I can take all of it and we can bring it next year. But I think that part, I think there'll be some big activations and big presence for Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's
from
really
brands.
Thinking about LA at this is kind of one of maybe the first big one of just all of the sporting events coming. So it's going to be an exciting preview of just what it feels like is going to be a nonstop party in LA for the better part of the next 6 years when it comes to sporting events. So we'll close, Eric, predictions for the year.
Yeah, I wish I could make a prediction on who's going to win. Got a lot of good partners, and
I figured with you two, I was really putting you on the spot. I appreciated that.
I have my own personal, club but I'm not going to let that out, and it might conflict with Troy, quite frankly. So that's another issue. But so here's one thing I can tell you is going to happen. You're gonna see like insane connectivity at SoFi. So that's the first thing, right? I mean, even I know the CTO was here, the other day talking about wow, So can't wait to see that. I mean, we did a real unbelievable job in Tampa last year, by the way, and so this year even SoFi as well. Fan experience, I think you're going to see everybody is going to be scrambling to the finish line to deliver great fan experience. I mean, you want that, right? You got to capture the value of the connectivity that is built there, right? I had the luck, I'll call it, of going out to a few stadiums this year, testing. We're doing some cool stuff. Love what I see in preseason. I mean, there's a lot of people at the stadiums already, right? Preseason games, pretty cool, right? So I think you're going to see a packed house. Everybody's ready to get back. Great sport. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not afraid to make a prediction. I'll say we'll get a Rams Chiefs rematch of that epic game from a couple years ago. Rams. Yeah. I'm an LA kid. Rams are going to pull this one out. So, well, I want to thank all of our panelists here: Troy, George, Lexi, Eric. This was a great discussion. I think everybody is really excited for this season, what's to come, and at some point we'll have to come back and see how we did on our predictions and our discussion and all that stuff. So with that said, thank you all for tuning in, and I've been Kyle Bunch, and thanks so much.